First is a question of sustainability. Second, a question of how many people are actually part of the welfare state. Um, uh, on the latter, beverage, when you consider the levels of deprivation, of squalor, of want, of poverty that Beveridge was addressing at the time he compiled his famous report, those are truly horrific. Particularly, of course, in a time of war when society is mobilized to be fighting for something, to defeat a great evil, it became impossible, really, morally impossible, I think, to ignore the levels of deprivation on the home front. And the failing to address that would in some ways constitute a defeat. Not as serious, perhaps, as a defeat, as a failure to defeat Nazism, but a defeat nonetheless. Now we have a situation where people who would previously have been considered quite well off, or at least comfortably off, are also part of the welfare state, but recipients of government welfare. So the welfare state has expanded way beyond its original remit. And that brings us back to then the question of its sustainability. The pressures on social spending are only likely to increase over the coming decades. This isn't really a matter for next year, 2 years' time from now, or even 5 years' time from now. It's not actually a question about deficit reduction in the short term. It's much more about putting public finances on a sustainable path over the course of the next 20, 30, even 40 years. Because with an aging population, that brings enormous costs with it as well. Even if we mount a rigorous effort and a successful effort at controlling the ever-increasing costs of healthcare, it does come across as that, and that's one of the difficulties with this whole discussion. One of the things that makes it very difficult to have an honest and open and fair-minded conversation about these issues, because it is much easier to impugn the good faith of your political opponents. But I suppose I would say this: the efforts at reforming welfare, and reforming welfare isn't just a case of spending less on welfare in the long term. Actually helping people into work, helping people lead fuller, more fulfilling, better lives for themselves, less dependent upon others, is something that might well, in individual cases, often cost quite a lot of money. But one of the ways of, if you don't reform the welfare system now, it will break eventually. And it will break eventually either because it simply becomes unaffordable, or because those who pay for it will revolt against it, and then the poor and the most needy really will be screwed. That if you want to save the welfare state, you need to reform it.